She used to be a Democrat in Congress, who then ran for president in 2020. Now Tulsi Gabbard's a Republican and in line to be the next director of national intelligence, wanting to be part of a Trump administration she thinks can transform the way government operates. Even before the election and her nomination, Gabbard told the Fox News Rundown in October of last year,
President Trump is bringing together people who aren't looking for their next job in Washington, who are simply motivated by a desire to serve the American people and make life better.
Gabbard has also served as a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserves after years in Hawaii's Army National Guard with a deployment during the Iraq War. Now, as the Director of National Intelligence nominee, Gabbard has her confirmation hearing at the Senate Intel Committee, which is chaired by Republican Tom Cotton.
I understand that people have their differences of opinion with Ms. Gabbard. Probably some Republicans disagree with the vote she's cast as a Democratic Congresswoman. A lot of Democrats may be upset that she finally saw the light and left the Democratic Party. I do hope, though, that we won't see anyone questioning her patriotism. You know, Hillary Clinton has basically called her a traitor in the past.
Gabbard will be questioned in public, then in private, after meeting with senators on the Intel Committee, some of them twice, like Mike Rounds.
We talked about her background. We talked about what was going to be expected of her in an open hearing, one in which both Republicans and Democrats would ask questions.
Senator Rounds is a Republican from South Dakota.
In the closed Intel hearing afterwards, in which we can talk about some items that are not necessarily available for public discussion on a more classified basis. That's what we started out with. I talked with her about her background. I asked her about her trips overseas. I also asked her about her understanding of the Intel community and the types of questions that she would be asked. When we got done with that, we agreed that we would bring her back in later on after she had a chance to go through and really kind of talk with some of the other people that were directly involved with Intel. We had her talk with Robert O'Brien, who a lot of people within the Intel community know and greatly respect. Along with him, we had her talk with some other people, including some folks that worked in the upper levels of the CIA. We wanted her to get that background, which she really hadn't had an opportunity to talk with before.
And Senator, I know when you spoke of Robert O'Brien, he's the former national security advisor. What have you spoken to him about what he thinks of Tulsi Gabbard?
I actually did. And he came back saying, look, she is a quick study. She picks stuff up quickly. She's doing this for the right reasons. She is learning that some of the statements that she had made earlier may not be up to speed today because of modifications to some of the tools that we use. And just as an example, the FISA tools that we have, this is basically part of the Intel community's response to terrorism around the world. We have the ability, using technology, to actually listen in and gather data on individuals that might be looking to harm people in our country, but who are overseas. And in doing so, there is also the possibility that if they're communicating with somebody in the United States, it might actually pick up on somebody's communication who is a citizen.
Right, and that's why there are critics, some in the Senate, of that FISA warrantless wiretap system because of that potential for Americans to be caught up.
Exactly. And we call that the 702 provisions of the FISA Act. But under 702, we've made significant reforms over the last 10 years. A number of those reforms she simply wasn't aware of. Okay. And once Mr. O'Brien had a chance to talk with her, and once she went back in and really had a chance to dive in, she found that some of the concerns that she had previously had been responded to and had been allayed. And so that was kind of the reason for having the advice period first, to have her go back in and actually look at what the modifications are that really don't gather a lot of public scrutiny, because a lot of it is done on some stuff which is rather confidential in nature. She had a chance to look at it and to find out what those protections were that were built into the law, and came back in the second time around with me, sat down, and we had a very good conversation. And she just said, look, I've learned a lot about the program. I've learned what some of the reforms were and so forth. And you're right, I do need to be able to support FISA. I do need to be able to explain to people how critical it is, because for the President of the United States to get accurate information about what's going around in the rest of the world, we run anywhere from 60 to 90% of his daily brief comes out of collection activity found within FISA.
All right. Now, Senator, I have to ask you about, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to ask you, you had referenced some trips that she had made in the past. 8 years ago, when she was a member of Congress from Hawaii, a Democrat, she went to Syria and she met with then leader, the dictator of that country in the middle of a civil war, Bashar al-Assad. Now, he's been ousted since, and there's a change in Syria. That caused a lot of consternation. When she did that, it was an issue when she ran for president as a Democrat in 2020. What do you think of that trip? What did you talk to her about?
Well, my background, I'm on the Armed Services Committee as well. And we travel overseas. We go to places and we talk to people that are not necessarily always real savory. But I can tell you that my message to her is it does not, in my opinion, it does not cause me concern that she visited with somebody from overseas or that they were not necessarily our friend. What I would have been concerned with is if she came back and was complimentary to them or doing something other than learning more information about them. And so I said, look, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to go over and you want to meet with somebody, I get it. You're an elected official and you're going to talk to an official in another country that may very well be someone that we're either going to be in conflict with later on or that we might find a path forward in a nonviolent way in the future. And so I told her, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to immediately condemn her from doing that.
So now there have been others who have suggested that it's possible that if she's the director of national intelligence, there might be some in the intel community who wouldn't want to share information with her, fearful that she might be sympathetic to adversaries like maybe even Russia, which some people have suggested. What do you say to that?
The way that I've looked at it is the president of the United States, first of all, has the benefit of the doubt. I believe, whether it has been a Republican president or a Democrat president, that they have the opportunity to choose the person that they want to provide them with advice, including their cabinet members. But in this particular case, for the director, the DNI, this is a person who actually provides the daily brief to the president. And if the president is comfortable enough that this is the person that they want to look through and to determine what information should be there, then he should have the benefit of the doubt, and we should honor that request. And in this open hearing, she will be reassuring him that he has made the right choice for this position. So I look at it as saying I'm not nearly as concerned about someone preferring not to provide her with details, because the way that this is set up, there's over 18 different areas in which you collect data from, different offices where that collection data works on a daily basis. She'll have access to all of that. If one organization or one foreign source decides for a while that they don't trust this person, I think that will quickly go away as she does her duties appropriately.
All right, you talk about the open and closed, different settings you'll have with Tulsi Gabbard on Thursday. The closed one, is that more frank? Is that more direct? We won't ever see it, but is that where senators can feel more comfortable with her and really getting into issues with her more directly?
You know, I've been on the Intel Committee now for 2 years, and we just finished with John Ratcliffe, who is the director of the CIA. And the open hearing was fairly formal but friendly, clearly well supported. In the closed hearing, we had more direct questions about items that we can't talk about in public on some classified capabilities and so forth. So I think there may be some more direct questions, some harder questions for her in private, but it will follow along the same lines as what you will see in public. It just allows us to perhaps ask her some more confidential questions that we can't talk about in the public, just because it would give away methods and sources if we did. So that's really the difference. But with John Ratcliffe, it was very comfortable. And honestly, behind closed doors in this committee, it is extremely difficult to tell the difference between the Republican members and the Democrat members, because it is focused on intel, the gathering of information, getting good information, and doing the analysis of whether or not the different agencies are doing a good job. So it's oversight as much as anything else.
Do you find, I mean, this is the committee has Republican advantage, but only by one. It only would take one Republican against her to, in the committee, be a no for her approval for a full confirmation. Do you think that's even possible? Do you think Republicans are pretty well behind her?
I think there are a number of Republicans who have publicly supported her. I think there's a number of Republicans that have declined to support her publicly until they hear her out in both the open hearing and in the closed hearing. So the one thing that I have found, and I think it's been noted already this year, is that members of the Senate, for the most part, respect very much the ability of each member to make up their own minds and to provide kind of their own counsel about the right vote to take. As you may have noticed, most recently with the Secretary of Defense, we had 3 members who declined to support him. But in doing so, they do not receive repercussions from other members of the Senate. That ability to cast your own vote is very, very important. So we don't know what the vote count will be yet, but a huge amount of that will depend upon her performance, both publicly and privately.
There have been some who want the committee's vote to be made public as far as who voted which way. That's not the way your committee works, though, is it?
That's correct. Any vote by the Intel Committee, because the vast majority of the work that we do is confidential, it's behind closed doors. So by committee rule, the tally on the vote is made public, but the vote cast by each separate member is not made formally public. Each individual member is allowed, if they want, to say how they voted on a particular issue, on a particular individual when they come through the process, but it is not a formal part of the process. That is accurate.
Well, it's going to be certainly interesting in the open and in the closed session for you and your colleagues. The hearing for Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence nominee, Thursday at the Senate and the Intelligence Committee. Senator Mike Rounds is a member. He's a Republican from South Dakota. And Senator, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you very much. And once again, this is the way the process is supposed to work. We provided advice to her. She came back. I thought she did a great job in front of me the second time around. And that's what we're looking for, is to have that opportunity to provide advice, but also the opportunity in the future here, hopefully, to be able to provide our consent.
Great, Senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.